From the moment you launch Armored Core 6, you feel the atmosphere the game is trying to convey. It comes across in small things at first, how the menus look, what they sound like, and how they feel when you navigate through them. It's all very functional with very few thrills, different hues of the same bluish grey with simple white text on top. It all feels very utilitarian. Where the developers did invest some time on what could be described as thrills aligns perfectly with the fantasy the game wants to convey. The rectangular menus with the slight pixelation filter and scrolling faint text in the background is there to make you feel like you're already piloting a mech or maybe navigating a panel inside an Armored Core. The music composed for the main menu screen starts to impart on you how you should be feeling playing this game. It's a slow, deliberate mix of melancholy synth with a repeating arpeggio that is accompanied by the sound of howling wind that invokes a chill feeling of isolation, like you're standing alone on top of a mountain about to jump in. It's rare you see this much care and attention put into your first few seconds of play, and even rarer to see it executed so well. What some developers might consider boring menus, others would use as an opportunity to tease out the fantasy you are about to embark on. It's setting the stage for what's about to come. The grizzled, somber tone of your handler Walter plays over the intercom.
We're close to Rubicon. Wake the dog up.
This gives you, the player, two key bits of information. You're nearing Rubicon, the setting, and it defines your relationship with Walter. Your character at this point in time is asleep, and you get to see how Walter thinks of you when you aren't around. He refers to you as a dog, which introduces Walter as someone who looks down on you and is going to use you to achieve his goals.
Time to get to work, 621.
As soon as you wake, Walter's tone shifts slightly, and now instead of calling you a dog, he refers to you by your designation, 621. It's a subtle shift that could either consciously or unconsciously make you distrust Walter and his duplicity. And when he first addresses you, it's straight to business. It's time to go to work.
Now, activate the AC.
The first thing I noticed while this intro played is that there is no music accompanying the cinematic. Just like the main menu, music is often used in intros to communicate to the player just how they should be feeling at this point in time. But here, there is no music. It's dead quiet, and the only thing you can hear is the heavy hums and blasts of machinery and the rough voice of Walter.
Now, activate the AC.
This all comes together to deliver a rich and palpable atmosphere, a sense of dread laced with ambiguity. The cold disregard Walter seems to have towards you makes you feel like you don't have much of a say in what's going on here, that you are more a tool that Walter is using to achieve their mysterious goals. As you break through the atmosphere, you get your first sight of Rubicon. It seems to be a cold, industrious, and uninviting place. The only thing visible for miles are the giant metal structures of industry.
Descent to ISB 2262, Rubicon 3, complete.
Your position is grid 135. Off target, but within permissible range.
You emerge, having crashed into a structure, smoke billowing off of you. You're off target, but close enough, and soon after, your AC comes to life. In the framing of the final shot, you get a clear sense of direction, and it combines with the lighting to aim you towards your destination when you gain control of your mech. But before gaining control, in every mission you see this sequence play out.
Main system, activating combat mode.
In this sequence, your HUD initializes and animates into being, in such a way that once again reinforces the mech fantasy you are about to embark on. Where other developers would have just flashed the HUD on the screen without so much of an afterthought, here the developers once again use this as an opportunity to keep you immersed in the world you're embarking on. This isn't just the HUD for the game. Well, I mean it is, but as far as you're concerned, this is the HUD for the Armored Core. It's rich, it's complicated, and all of it once again is in theme with that no-thrills utilitarian simplicity we saw on the main menu. As you gain control and play the game, you notice the soundscape begin to fill with lots of beeps and bops, like when your EN consumption is getting low or drains. The rest of the soundscape is done really well. The hums of your AC piloting around as it gains speed, the heavy thuds of guns the size of buildings firing,
Perfect chance to test your AC.
and that's all managed well enough so that when you need critical information communicated to you, the beeps and bops still slip through the chaos. Now shortly after this, you find yourself in your first bout of tutorialized combat. Your first few enemies are really easy to deal with, and that's pretty common. It gives you that first boost in confidence as you come to grips with everything around you, and the game teaches you the core concepts of the combat model. This is the clunkiest the game will ever feel to you, and it's funny looking back at how I was playing the game compared to my later sorties. But we're getting ahead of ourselves.
AC's taken damage. Patch it up.
2 repair kits remaining.
See the contaminated city down there? That's where you're landing. Access the catapult.
This next sequence transition does a few things. It propels the player forward just as the AC shoots out of the catapult, signifying the end of the beginner sequence of the tutorial and propelling you into the mission proper. Walter then provides context as to why you are here.
If we get our hands on Rubicon's coral, we'll make a killing. Plenty for a merc with a fried brain like you to buy their life back.
You're here to get coral and make a killing for yourself and for Walter. The way Walter speaks about you implies that you've seen better days, and perhaps, for you at least, the pursuit of profit could have more to it.
Enough chat, back to work. Scavenge the AC wrecks ahead and find a valid mercenary license. We're illegals here. You'll need ID to operate.
And where so many games start you off feeling noble and heroic, Armored Core wants you to question your motives here. In this next section, the game introduces more advanced topics as the tutorial level continues to progress. And your main objective is to find the mercenary license that you can use.
An AC? Where the hell did that come from?
You're also introduced to one of the factions of the game, the Rubicon Liberation Front, or RLF.
Guerrillas from the Liberation Front, picking up signals from AC wrecks. Follow the markers.
And before fighting some of them, you can hear them talking with one another.
Did you hear anything about what the court?
We're being attacked!
Unidentified AC! Hard fire!
And when you do aggress them, they sound normal. The developers didn't try to paint these characters as villains of any kind. You're more attacking them.
What?
Mystery! We got subject guard!
Get out of here! We can handle them!
That's the PCA's planetside force. Keep a low profile. We don't want them breathing down our necks.
Shortly after, you're also introduced to another faction, the Planetary Closure Administration, or PCA. They don't discriminate between you or the RLF, and you immediately feel like you're stepping into a world rich with conflict already. Walter advises you not to draw any unnecessary attention to yourself as you continue on your way, which kind of cements the PCA as a bigger threat than the RLF. Throughout your search for the mercenary license, you get to see and read more about all the different factions in the world. You see Balam Industries, other independent mercenaries. You also learn about the ranking system of mercenaries. And eventually, you find RB-23 in an ominous-looking crater.
That's it. Try accessing the wreck. Registration number RB-23. Rank fits the bill. Call sign.
But before you hear their call sign, the tutorial boss appears and it's the PCA helicopter that you saw earlier.
No need to pick a fight with the PCA. But it doesn't matter. Take it out now, they won't have enough to ID you.
Right-hand ammunition at 50%.
Use your mobility in the air to get clear of explosions on the ground.
1 repair kit remaining.
Up until this point in time, you've been mostly fighting members of the RLF. Nothing felt like a challenge. All of a sudden, you're up against a very competent enemy that is part of the PCA. Through the difficulty of this fight, you can figure out the power dynamics in play on Rubicon. The PCA are definitely the top dogs here, so much so that even Walter doesn't want to go up against them.
50%.
For most players, this is likely going to be where their skills are really tested for the first time, and maybe even where you're defeated for the first time. This is your typical From Software first boss. You must be this tall to keep riding, and the player really needs to get tested here and get to grips with the combat system in order to move on. One annoying thing about Armored Core is the boundaries of the level, especially during this boss fight, as it can often get you into trouble. What's worse, you are restricted to these boundaries, but enemies often aren't. Thankfully, this is less of a problem during the rest of the game, but in this fight, it might sneak up on you.
No need to pick a fight with the PCA. But it doesn't matter. Take it out now, they won't have enough to ID you. Use your mobility in the air to get clear of explosions on the ground. You've got them now. Make it count, 621. We got what we came for. Tie up the loose end, 621.
2 repair kits remaining. AP at 50%. AP at 30%.
And when you finally defeat the boss, you get a very satisfying slow-motion camera shift followed by a delicious explosion.
Confirmed. Heavy combat helicopter is down. That's all for our work here today, 621.
Now you get to see your call sign, Raven. It's a name that carries a lot of weight in the franchise if you're a returning player, and if you're new, it doesn't really stick out much.
Raven. That's your new name here on Rubicon.
The camera fades and you see the results screen of the mission. You see how much money you've earned and how much money you were charged for expenses. This screen really has two significant things going for it. Firstly, if you're new to the series, seeing your pay reduced due to expenses might be a bit surprising. Things like how much it'll cost you to repair your AC or how much ammo you used up come out of your paycheck. Now granted, Armored Core 6 is way more lenient with expenses this time around, but it helps reinforce that feeling of dread where nothing seems to be tilted in your favor here. Second, and this is more of a smart design decision, you don't see a ranking for the mission that you just completed. If you've played games like this before, you're all too familiar with the feeling of finally beating a hard level only to see the game tell you that your grade was a D, which takes all the joy out of winning. Armored Core 6 fixes this by only giving you a ranking on your second, third, and consecutive playthroughs of an existing mission. Most of your players are incredibly unlikely to get an S ranking on their first time out during a mission, so it saves it for the repeat runs, and it does away with that awful feeling of seeing a shitty letter grade right after you felt successful. Now with the mission done, you get a simple cinematic that sets the stage and explains the importance of Rubicon and why everyone is clamoring for Coral.
Coral, a sublime substance. Discovered on Rubicon, a planet on the frontier of developed space. For a time, Coral was a revolutionary energy resource and data conduit, poised to transform human society by leaps and bounds. They called it the Fires of Ibis, a storm of flame that tore through the stars, leaving lethal contamination in its wake. Coral, the kindling, was thought to have been utterly consumed, forever lost. However, on Rubicon, the embers continued to burn. Humanity would inevitably return to stoke the fire.
Afterwards, Allmind, the mercenary support network, welcomes you.
Registration number RB23. Call sign Raven. Authentication complete. Removing MIA status. Restoring access privileges. This is Allmind, the mercenary support system. Welcome back, Raven.
Looks like you passed the authentication. Raven. That's who you are now, here on Rubicon. I've picked up some work for you already. Take a look, 621.
And you get a lot of information on what you stand to gain by being a member of the Allmind network.
This notification follows restoral of access privileges. Allmind provides a combat training simulator to support its mercenaries. Your license was in a suspended state. Perhaps you may need a refresher. As an added incentive, completion of the exercises will be rewarded with AC parts. You stand to benefit regardless.
And then after the intro ends, your journey into Armored Core 6 begins. You can often tell a lot about the first impression a game is trying to make, and From Software games always meticulously craft their intros with a lot of care and attention towards nailing that first impression and setting the stage for what you're about to embark on. So that was Armored Core 6 intro. I thoroughly enjoyed my time with this game and would recommend you give it a shot. Until next time, gamers, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.